Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brayton Horn. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St. Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brayton Horn will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brayton Horn at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some evil. This society needs a spectacle.
A lot of stuff happening across the globe, and we need to find out how people viewing stuff that's happening here on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, friends who are living on the outside. So we get a look at what's happening on the outside, and the friends from the outside, they take a look at what's happening on the inside. That's the whole idea for our View from the Outside this morning. We've got our host, Brayton Horn. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Farron Topwell. How are you?
Doing great, feeling good. Some bad vibes this week. 2 youngsters in my area was taken out. Sad news for the Kosher family. The courts here in St. Vincent, the courts here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are still taking a look at whether they would be going to be taking a look at the petitions. Stuff like that still happening here. So it's a great week for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Sad one too for people who believe in rights and wrongs, and I really feel it for the Kosher family. These 2 youngsters, for no apparent reason, the stories that you're hearing really would make any father feel to do some stupidness.
Well, Randy, the news of those 2 young men who were found shot and killed at Sion Hill, it has rocked not just people at home in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but across the globe as well. Because people here in London have been talking about it. People from across the pond in the United States and Canada have been, talking about it. So that news has really, rocked not just the nation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but people across the globe. And it is sad when we notice that things, especially in relation to crime, which features in A View from the Outside incidentally this morning, keeps getting out of control.
And the sad thing too is that a community like Sion Hill would be given a black eye because the youngsters' bodies were found in the area, but nobody is saying that anybody in Sion Hill killed them, or actually that they were killed in Sion Hill. So one of the things we need to clear up so that the people don't take a black eye in Sion Hill.
Yes, Randy, we await the results of the investigation. But you and I quite well know, as a topic which was actually covered on A View from the Outside previously, in relation to investigation, that under this regime, the investigation seems to be never ending, and there never seems to be a result, a report, or anything when an investigation is, if and when an investigation is promised. So we wait to see, and I agree with you that that if indeed the people of Sion Hill are not culpable in any way in what has happened, then Sion Hill itself needs to be cleared of any such black mark, as you put it.
I see.
Out here, Randy, you know that the elections are heating up. Elections of June 8th are heating up here in the United Kingdom. Just yesterday, there were local council elections in the country, and Labour Party has performed miserably. In fact, they lost over 400 of the council seats that they had, and the Conservatives have gained, I think it's in excess of 500. And I think Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, he has admitted that that turning around such results would be of historic proportions. So he knows the task with which he's faced, and only the results will tell. In France, we are hearing that Emmanuel Macron, who is the leading candidate in the French presidential election, we are hearing that allegations are made of Russian interference in the elections. Again, we await to see what happens. But there's quite a bit happening across the world. But we are going to look on from across the world on what's happening inside in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But before we do so, though, Randy, I just want to say, pay tribute to a very ardent listener to this program, if you're from the outside. In fact, an ardent listener to Nice Radio, he has been, and an ardent listener to this program. And he is very close to me, or has been very close to me. It's my father-in-law who passed away a couple of days ago. So I just want to pay tribute to him. His name was Samuel Cordis from Newgrounds. Many people knew him as Lester Cordis. I just want to pay tribute to him and let him know, wherever he is, that if you're from the outside, continues in the same passion and the same vein that he has grown accustomed to and has encouraged on many occasions. Randy, good morning to all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, all listeners everywhere. The weather in London is cloudy, mostly, and temperature is approximately 57 degrees Fahrenheit. It's slightly warmer than last week, but not as warm as it could be at this time of year. On a view from the outside this week, we look at the issue of contradiction. contradiction, contradiction, with the view being that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has in itself become a tale of two cities and is currently a nation where contradiction reigns supreme, much to the detriment of the nation. It was Charles Dickens who in 1859 wrote the novel A Tale of Two Cities, featuring the French Revolution. And the opening line of that novel, the opening lines, I should say, of that novel, have probably become the most famous opening lines in English literature. And those lines so aptly describe the situation which exists in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today. Here are the opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. Well, contradictions are all embodied in those lines from Charles Dickens. And one could look at those lines and fit St. Vincent and the Grenadines perfectly into them, some say. It is the Cambridge Dictionary definition that we prefer today. And that is the Cambridge Dictionary definition of contradiction that we prefer today. It defines, that's the Cambridge Dictionary, it defines contradiction as the fact of something being the complete opposite of something else, or very different from something else, so that one of them must be wrong. And it is in that vein that we look at examples of contradictions which infect St. Vincent and the Grenadines. While the current discussions on accountability, which are taking place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today, are in themselves a contradiction. We first had the call from the opposition that the government must be accountable to you, the taxpayers of the country, when they appropriate monies belonging to you, the taxpayer. That is, when they go to Parliament and get approval to borrow your money. And when they indeed borrowed your money, they must lay audited statements before the Parliament of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And those statements must be approved by the Director of Audit. Well, in contradiction, we have the current regime appropriating taxpayers' money, your money. They sell off your lands and spend your money. Yet, they now go to great lengths to try to convince you that they are not accountable in the way suggested by the opposition, and in the way which they must be accountable, as dictated by the Constitution and other laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They write hollow letters and articles, and they make superfluous statements. And they, as well as their agents, try their hardest to shift the discussion. So why the contradiction, you may ask? Why are they dodging, you may ask? Why do they not want to fulfill their constitutional and other legal obligations to you, the taxpayers of the country? Why? Well, such behavior, no doubt, leads to inferences and speculations, rightly or wrongly, which throw the regime in a light to suggest some form of skullduggery. And this is much to the detriment of the entire nation. There is also the contradiction where it is said, especially by members of the regime, that St. Vincent and the Grenadines have never been better off. How can that be, you may ask, when unemployment is at the highest it has ever been in the country's history? No one believes the official figures of 20% unemployment because everyone feels the pain and effects of the unemployment situation. The private sector is shrinking daily because businesses continue to go out of existence. They continue to shut down with regularity. The cries of mothers are getting louder and the tears are flowing more heavily as the mothers lament that they cannot afford to buy food to feed their children. They cannot afford to send their children to school, and this in an age where the regime boasts of an education revolution. This in an age where they tout education revolution. Mothers say they cannot afford to buy food. They cannot afford the cost of books and uniform, and they cannot afford to pay transportation. And of course, it must not be forgotten that the school buildings themselves, seem the most dilapidated they've ever been. And you may ask, how can it be the best of times when most farmers are literally on bended knees? Farmers are plagued with the scourge of predial larceny and a regime which does very little or nothing to assist them. Farmers are stuck with their produce, what's left from those who have stolen, and they have no viable market for their produce in many cases. Farmers are faced with access roads to their lands which have been in the worst state of disrepair in the history of the country. So how can it be the best of times for farmers when agriculture needs a complete revival? You may ask again, how can it be the season of light when many believe that there is an evil and darkness which pervade the land? Oh yes, many do believe that, because crime continues to escalate out of control. The lives of young men, and older ones too, are snuffed out in the twinkling of an eye, and no sight of a resolution. Other crimes, including robbery and theft and rape, continue to increase and increase. And in all this, there's a regime which promised to be tough on crime and the causes of crime. Yet, there's little evidence of that promise bearing any fruit. With such glaring evidence before your eyes, you will no doubt be justified in asking the question, how can it be the season of light? And you may be further justified in concluding that, on the contrary, it is really the season of darkness. Time does not permit us to cite all of the examples unfolding in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which fit into the opening lines of Charles Dickens' novel. However, a question you may ask is, how can we have everything before us, as we are told from time to time by members of the regime, when healthcare is so in need of a major resuscitation? Patients at the General Hospital are having to purchase their medication, basic medication too, at drugstores. They have to go to the drugstores to purchase their medication. Amputation of limbs is on the increase. Certainly, none of that evidence substantiates the claim that we have everything before us. In fact, in contradiction, you may well be justified in concluding that this is an epoch when we have very little or nothing before us. So, Vincentians, as we look forward as a nation, look for your spring of hope. Be mindful to sift through the rubble. Do the assessment, the self-assessment. You know your own situation. Do not let anyone mess with your mind and tell you that things are glorious when you know they are not. You know which of the two cities you survive in. Beware of the contradiction. The Russian-American novelist and philosopher once said, whenever you think you are facing a contradiction, stop and think, and you'll find that one of them is wrong. And Vincentians, you would know which one is wrong. And to those who hold the reins of power in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and who many say are the masters of contradictions, be ye mindful of what Ayn Rand said. She said, to arrive at a contradiction is to reveal an error in one's thinking. To maintain a contradiction is to abdicate one's mind and to evict oneself from the realm of reality. Vincentians need to be brought back to the realm of reality so that the country can move forward. Until next week, Randy, this is Britton Horn with a view from the outside, reminding our listeners to send feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. That's aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. Randy, have a beautiful Saturday, have a beautiful weekend, and have a fruitful week ahead. Until next week, goodbye.
Thank you, Britton. Thank you.